Okay, here we go. Good evening and welcome again to Walking Backwards. Actually, this is a little bit different. I guess we're going to be veering off into a different subject, sort of, after listening to John from Sunday. Um, I We're back to the subject of who are you again. Um, it seems like this is so important. We continually come back to it. Um, I think it's important to start out with. John was talking about how Peter, jumped out the boat, walked on water, uh, asked Jesus to walk like him. And I think we did touch on it last week. I remember saying how I wonder how Peter would be perceived today. I wonder. Last week I said to him, and John calls him Peter the Mouth. And last week I was like, he's probably the guy in the crowd that won't shut up. He's the one that talks all the time, but secretly the rest of them in the crowd wish they had as much courage as he did. Well, I wonder what his label would be today. Would it be ADHD? Would it be, what would it be? I mean, the world is so clever or quote unquote clever. Everything needs a label. I actually years ago, I started a psychology degree, and we had a whole class on what a label was. In a nutshell, it's so that two or more people can talk about the same thing and know what they're talking about. That's what a label is. But when you're a kid and you're told you're an idiot, you wear that for the rest of your life, unless you change your identity, and that's really for me, that was the crux of healing, was finding out who I really was, but also finding out who I wasn't, and forgiving others, and finding out who I was gave me the ability to forgive. The thing that keeps going through my head is the pen thing. So I guess we're going to talk about identities. Let me make sure. I'm so glad my computer's working. I'm shaking. I ain't kidding either, man. This thing's been on since 6 o'clock tonight, and it was like I didn't care if it burnt the screen, Anyway, so
hurry up before it goes off.
Yeah, right. Quickly, it's a time thing. So this is us. This is us before we come to Christ. All our weirdness, all the dysfunction. This is you. Come to the end of your rope. Heard about God. Not sure if he's real. Definitely don't trust him yet. But we've exhausted every avenue as far as trying to meet our own needs. We've tried to be loved the way we need to be loved, and everybody's let us down. We've tried to be forgiven for all the screw ups we've done, and we've burnt bridges, and family members aren't talking to us. Maybe a divorce is in there. Maybe the kids aren't talking to you. Just failure, lots of failure, lots of shame, lots of guilt, fear. And you're sitting on the edge of your bed, and you've heard about God. There's a couple of people in your life that they start talking about God, and it's okay for them, but you're not sure about you. But you're in a position now where you really don't have much choice. Again, you think the circumstances have got to this point because you're the biggest screw up there is, because God's not in the picture yet. So you're sitting on the couch, sitting on the end of your bed, wherever, by yourself, and you're like, all right, God, if you're real, come into my life and show me. So at that moment in time, from his perspective, not ours, from his perspective, comes along with a 357 and he shoots you dead. Now, we can continue to talk about how. Hey, Dan.
Evening.
We can continue to, talk about dysfunction, but like I said, this is you. You've just asked God into your life. He's come along and he's shot you dead. So let's just say, think of a dysfunction in your life. Does this man overeat or woman? No, he's dead. Is this person an alcoholic? No, he's dead. Is this person loved? No, he's dead. Can this person sin? No, because he's dead. So you get the drift. Now, this is what God does, because this is the way he does it. This is the way that it has to be done. Hey, Bill.
Hey.
So if he left it there, the world would be empty, I guess. So, but what he does is he comes along and he raises up a brand new creation. This brand new creation never has sinned, isn't sinning now, and never will. This brand new creation can do all things through Christ who strengthened it. This brand new creation is inseparably joined to Christ. Him and Christ are one, or her and Christ are one. Let that sink in for a minute, because the reason we have so much conflict in our life is because we forget who we are, or we don't know who we are. We think we're the old man or the old woman that needs fixing into the new. And like I just said, God's already done for us what we can't do for ourselves by raising up a brand new creation. So all that time where people go around under law and lies, that's another thing. This old person we were is completely motivated by law and lies, completely motivated by faith. This new person that we are is completely motivated by faith, hope, and love. Is completely walking in grace and truth all the time. The issue is, who are you? That is the question, and that is the what John was talking about on Sunday with Peter's name changing, the identity. There's so much when you translate from the Greek or the Hebrew that comes into context. But I wanted to, I guess the Lord was really impressing on me. We're going to be talking about identity and things like that. And the perspective that we come from is, this is the old man, this is the flesh, this is the new man that walks in newness of life in the spirit. This is life and this is death. So I just wanted to get that across. Anybody got any other thoughts on that? I didn't want to take up the whole night. I just wanted to get that.
That's it in a nutshell.
Right.
Yeah, I mean that's where it's at, and believing. Well, John closed out with two thoughts, and it was just like Peter said, "Thou art the Christ." Where else can we go? We have no other way to go. So to know who Jesus is, and is he able to handle our problems? Okay, they get that settled. Is he able? Number two, who are you? The older than you, just like you nailed it, man. I mean, that's that.
Mm.
It is so simple, but we complicate the crap out of it. I think, and
Yeah.
religion really messes with. He was talking about the Pharisees, and I thought about how it's the same thing. Religion makes merchandise of the gospel. Think about that, bro.
That's what John said. I missed that.
Yeah. Well, no, that's my spin on it. Okay.
Oh, okay. No, man, that's awesome.
God talks to me about it, but what he did say that. He said the Pharisees controlled the money. They didn't have to take care of their parents. They didn't have to. They could give the money to the church, then go get the temple, and then they'll get the money out of the temple to do whatever they wanted to. They made merchandise out of their religion. They didn't have the gospel, but out of their religion. And today, so many churches do the same damn thing. They manipulate people to make them look good, or to fill their coffers, or to feed their ego, or whatever, and so the religion makes merchandise out of the gospel. That's a whole nother sideline, but
no, keep going. You're preaching tonight, man.
That's a good one, mate. I'm telling you.
You got to hit the metal when it's hot, brother. I do black. But it moves me. I mean, and it should move us. When it does. But no, that's all I got, man. And like I said, we can say amen and shut the thing down from what Martin said. I mean, that's it. That's the gospel. And I just pronounced the benediction, okay, Dan?
Yeah, man. I think
there's some good stuff for the rest of you guys have got,
So does anybody want to come forward to the altar? For me, I listened to this on Sunday, and I'm going, I used to love Paul, because Paul, the Romans 7 thing, I don't do what I want to do, I do what I don't want to do, and so when we get in our mind frame that we can handle it, I screw it all up, and I get in the way, and really I don't. The funny part is not funny, but the odd part is I don't need religion rules and regulations to screw it up any more than I already am. All of my own. I don't need them. I don't care what religion. I don't need them. And I don't need, there's 6 of us here, so I don't need the other 5's opinions, because everybody will have a different opinion. Oh, there I went. I don't know. Can you see me?
Yeah, you're good.
Somebody's
okay.
back
My screen's doing weird things. Our cable went out today, and it's been doing weird things. So I guess this week I'm Martin, and but
that was a shot.
You're identifying as Martin.
That was a shot.
Yeah, boy. Yeah, I'm identifying with Martin.
It could be worse. Bro.
Now I see Peter, who Jesus literally changes his name. Wow. And the name means something amazing. And he says, on this, I'll build my church. And, not one of them were there at the cross, but his mother. His mother was there. And yet God still used those, what I would call myself, if I was one of them, he still used those failures. That's what they were. They failed. But they had to fail to come to Romans 7:24. What a wretched man I am. Who will rescue me from this body of death? Thanks be to God through Jesus Christ our Lord. Peter, all of them had to come to that point, the same point that each of us had to come to, where my life ain't working. The drinking ain't working. The sex ain't working. The pornography ain't working. The work ain't working. 3 years ago in June, I retired from being a cop. You know how many times I've had a visitor from one of them? All those cops that I knew. One guy has come by this house purposely just to see how I was doing. Every other time, which was just a couple times, it was somebody to have something to do with work, had to talk to me about an old case or something. And one time, and I actually came from a meeting that a neighborhood watch meeting, because the people in the neighborhood want me there. It's not even my neighborhood, but it was. I was very active in their neighborhood and trying to get things done, and so it was. I'm honored to still get to go, but still, those are people. They don't call and see how I'm feeling. They don't call and see, hey, how's Gail? They don't call and see, is your house doing okay? Are your finances okay? But God does. Thanks be to God, who knows everything, sees everything. He knows my prayers before I pray them. He saw me in my mother's womb. Man. So does he change our name? I don't know what my new name is. I'll find out one day. And it'll probably be mean something having to do with man who speaks a lot.
Wow. I'm sure we can come up with a couple here tonight if you want.
Hey guys, I got to tell you, because I think you all I'm crazier than a loon. All right, but I remember praying. We got a new name. So God, what is my name? What is my name? And the first thing that popped into my mind. Dipshit. and I said, I don't think that's God.
It was
not.
But what is? I'll just elect.
I think a lot of times, I think what happens a lot of times, guys, that we think that it's so black and white that you've got to be at this place before God uses you. And that's not what I'm getting from Peter and all this stuff. I mean, see, when you know that you know that you're his beloved child in whom he's well pleased, even though you screw up and Jim make bad choices sometimes or whatever, maybe not, but he still uses you, and he's using you. I came from persuasion that God can't use somebody that's unclean, and that's a bunch of religious crap. Okay, the real me is perfect and pure, but that flesh of mine sometimes shows itself, But I don't want to monopolize the time, but I just when you talked about the new name, I had to tell you that I asked God, and that's what I got, and I said, "Oh my."
I was thinking about that Monty Python skit where they're sitting in the Colosseum, and one of them, I think it was Eric Idle, turns around and he says, "From now on, I want to be known as Daphne." And but Mike, you took it to a whole different level. But the thing is, we're sitting here having a laugh and a joke, but and Bill was saying, how long were you a cop, Bill?
35 years, and 3 years before that on the auxiliary, so a total of 38 years.
Wow. So 38 years working in an environment, and you retire, and one person comes by and sees you. I don't care who you are, that hurts, you know.
Yeah. Oh no, it does.
Feeling pretty unloved at that point.
It's you know, it's the same sort of thing. You know, you when we were kids, we would go on holiday to Spain and, you know, different parts of Europe, and, you know, you'd have a friend for 2 weeks, and it would be like, oh yeah, I'll give you a call when we get back to England, and blah blah blah.
Absolutely.
Never hear from them again, you know. And it's different jobs, different things, and the point I'm making is there are times in our lives when you're believing who you are, but you still get hurt. You know,
Sure.
there's still pain, there's still grief, and that's what questions. That's what brings in the question. Well, you know, this is who I am. I shouldn't be feeling like this.
Yeah.
But who says that? Who says so?
All right. Who says
You know,
that?
Well, it's expectations. You know, I put expectations on all those other guys, all those other gals that they would call me, and then they let me down. No, I let me down before any of them did, because I'm the one who put the expectations on them. I'm the one who made that course that they would always be.
yeah.
Who can save me? Thanks be to God, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Good point.
I mean, I could have gone the other way with all that, and gone down in the dumps and gone back to drinking and smoking and all the crap that I did to make myself feel better. But first off, I knew it didn't work the first time. Why would it work now?
Well, the thing is, I mean, I think the thing that you've John was talking about, you know, it's not what goes in the mouth that defiles us; it's what comes out.
Right.
And to take it a step further, nobody really knows what's going on up here. You know, we could be sitting here, fat, dumb, and happy, and everything's cool on the outside, and on the inside, we're paddling like ducks. And the point that I think John is making, or has been making, even with the Walking Backwards series, has been, there's a huge difference between walking in law and lies and walking in grace and truth. You know, and you sit there and you're like, yeah, no shit, Sherlock, of course there is. But again, I'm talking personally, because we can all play a good game, and we have done at various times in our lives, to put on the front, to make ourselves feel better, to, you know, stay busy, so that we stuff what is really happening. You know, you might get addicted to watching TV, or, you know, there's just different things that go on. But what we're talking about is wanting to go from this to this, because from God's perspective, it's already happened. It's already taken place.
Right.
But a lot of people that I've come across in the past, including me in the early days, didn't want to let go of this, even though I was sitting in a rehab. So I tried to make this look like this.
Yeah.
And it killed me. Yeah, we can call it religion, but I guess the point that I want to make is, there's no difference back then than there is this afternoon. You know, the same decisions need to be made. Who am I? And just because you've been in it 10 years, 10 minutes, 10 seconds, it doesn't matter. because it's all based on a relationship. It's not based on, like John was saying, the Pharisees was totally based on performance, totally based on ritual, totally based on uniformity. Life in the Spirit is about the relationship. I'm reading a book at the moment. I put it back in the bedroom. I was so excited my laptop was working. I wanted to talk about this book. He's talking about the same thing that John's going towards, about who God is, who we are. And what he was saying was how back in the day when Peter was, out there fishing and walking on the water, people's relationship with God pretty much had nothing to do with relationship. It was all about policies and procedures. It was all about uniformity. It was all about going to the synagogue and this was said and you answered with that and blah, blah, blah. So that when the disciples asked Jesus how to pray, and he started off with our Father who art in heaven, that was more personal than they'd ever heard before in their life. Because for them to use the word Father was completely foreign. The word that's coming to mind is Elohim. And even that isn't as personal as another way of pronouncing it. It's standoffish. It's, you're talking about not somebody that you're in a relationship with. You're talking about somebody who you've heard about. You've not really had a conversation with that other person, but you've heard of others who have had a conversation with him. Your relationship with this person is based on somebody else's opinion. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about an intimate personal relationship where not only does he raise you from the dead, but he, as we've said in the past, he brings you from glory to glory and he walks you through that. It isn't you've arrived. Now hear me when I say this. He's blessed you with every spiritual blessing. This new person that you are has everything that you'll ever need. The problem is we don't believe that because we haven't experienced it in this. This is completely foreign. This is completely familiar, but it led to death. So we can tell this new person that you are that you're completely loved, but until you experience it for yourself, it's meaningless. The question is, do you want to experience it? The question is, do you want to experience being forgiven? Because there's a big difference between hearing about it, knowing about it, and experiencing it. To me anyway. I just dropped my pen. Somebody else take over.
Our Father who art in heaven, if you think about that in truth, that becomes a possessive statement. Our Father. That's our Father who is in heaven. And Jesus is saying, our Father who is in heaven. He's including the whole group and himself. Our Father, our Daddy who's in heaven, hallowed be his name. He deserves all honor and glory. Our Father. They had never had that before. Never. They weren't allowed. Only that one priest that had the rope attached to him was allowed.
Right.
And they never even dreamt that he looked at God and said, our Father who art in heaven.
Right.
How dare he? By their rules, this was, I mean, talk about a new gig. Holy cow.
Yeah.
This was-
Yeah. What do you think of that?
As of just you're holding up the markers, and you were saying earlier, if this guy believes it, and I think that's what Paul was trying to get to when he was talking about be transformed. Your mind has to be transformed because watch this. Because although you have it already, got my own marker. Mine's though it's true all day long, until this guy's mind is transformed and has that experience, like you said, Martin, has it's not real. So you may struggle along for a while, and you're going to church, and you're you inevitably, until you have that transformation, you're going to become religious for whatever environment you're in. You'll learn the language. You become I won't say a chameleon, but in every church body, and everywhere you go, you have things that are acceptable and not acceptable. So you figure out how to maneuver in that environment to become accepted by everybody. So, like you said, Martin, earlier, you until we could very easily never be transformed and just incorporate Jesus into our lives and our mindset at that current time. We can just incorporate Jesus into that and look like we're transformed. We could say all the right things. We could do all the right things. But, inside you're still same old struggle.
Now remember, this man is dead. The minute you ask Christ into your life, the old man that you were is dead, and he raises up a brand new creation. Now, if you're not exposed to that thinking, you're going to spend the rest of your life trying to jump through hoops so that you look like this. And that's the sad thing. We're wasting energy trying to transform ourselves from this to this when God's already done for us what we can't do for ourselves. That is the saddest thing of all, because you're wasting time on trying to fix yourself when it's already been taken care of. So shut up and listen. God says, be still and know that I'm God.
Yeah.
Our world is built on the hurry. Hurry up and do this. Hurry up and do that. They've made it a science in how to be busy. And God says, be still and know that I am God. Why do you think that is? Because we're detoxing off of, now from his point of view, this is already dead. The reason that we're having a hard time is because we don't believe that. We don't think that's possible. We've never experienced that in our life. What that looks like in our life is a circumstantial change, and you'll be walking away going, wow, that was different. Wow, I handled that different. Or wow, I really wanted to say something different than what came out of my mouth there. Or, well, usually I would freak out over that. Or usually I would take that personally. But I didn't. That's God doing for you what you can't do for yourself. Because the transformation has taken place. Now, do we believe that? No. And like Dan was saying, that's why we get caught up in, well, I'm a Christian now, I have to go to church. Really? Who told you that?
Yeah. I think a lot of times too, I think I know I've done it. It's we'll almost well, we say we had a rough day or something, and I lost it on somebody or just whatever, you feel like you didn't do well that day. And I think the big mistake we make is we equate how things are going to how successful we are as a Christian, or if that makes sense. I don't know if I'm articulating it, but I think we have a measuring stick. Okay, if this doesn't happen and this doesn't happen this week, I'm doing good. But what happens when it all happens? It doesn't change your status.
Right.
And then I think like there's this, I'll just throw this in, and then it's like I think there's this myth of when you've arrived, you're a really good Christian. I don't want to use the word arrive, but when you're a really good Christian, everything's going right. All the bills are paid. Everything is, everything's smooth. You don't have no big problems. And I think that's because there's a lot of, I don't know, say phoniness, that goes on. People are not intimate enough with each other to share their issues. So, like I could see Bill every week at church. He could open the door for me, and I could say, "Hey, brother Bill, how you doing?" He's, "Oh, blessed by the best, brother." And but meanwhile, he just buried his dog, that morning. But I just, and so then there's, as you're coming into it and you're growing up, you look and you go, man, when I could be as steady and solid as Bill, because every time I see him, he's just got a smile on his face and everything's going great. And you aspire for that. But it's, but I mean, we all know that's a false assumption, but I just think it's a big myth, and it's like an unsaid thing. But it's, I think we just equate how things are going to how successful our walk is. And that's all. I just wanted to throw that in there. Whether you're having a good day or a bad day. I'm a good Christian, or man, I got work to do. Oh, I failed today. How can you fail? It's not based on what you do, whether good or bad. It doesn't move. It doesn't move the cage.
Right. And the funny thing is, the people that you put on a pedestal, the Lord has a habit of knocking them off real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's the words that's coming to mind is jealous. He wants to be on the pedestal. He wants to be, your go-to. Yeah, just like in the recovery movement, it's great to have a sponsor, but the sponsor's job is to direct you to the higher power, not to be the higher power. Early on, I put John Glenn on a pedestal, and believe me, he got knocked off pretty damn quick. There was a few people in the circle that I was in at the time that I want to be like him, and I want to be like him. And there was no earth-shattering, but in my life, they were knocked off the pedestal, and it was more about me than it was about them. Again, because it's about the relationship, and it was about me not bringing into this relationship with God the games that I had played in this relationship. Does that make any sense? Because you used the perfect word, Dan, chameleon. We were all chameleons. We've all been chameleons in this world to get our needs met. So there's no difference than trying to save our own arse in this world than there is in this world. But we don't have to in this world. We're free. Do we want to believe it?
I
Go
got
ahead,
something. I got something unless Ron wants to go.
Go ahead, Jim.
I can share what the Lord showed me out of that message. John started off with Peter walking on water towards the boat. They thought it was a ghost. And Peter recognized, okay, first of all, when they thought it was a ghost, and Peter said, well, once they heard Jesus's voice and Peter recognized his voice, my version says, Lord, if it's really you, command me to come to you and I'll come. John said, since it's you. So I guess maybe in the Greek or something that's translated like that. Since that is you, since they recognized that was him. Something in Peter clicked. He recognized Jesus's supernatural power and ability to walk in this world. Now, up until that point, he might have saw some of it with the feeding the multitudes and the healing the sick and all that, raising the dead even. Well, did he do Lazarus before they walked on water? Or was that after? Anyway, he had already saw some of the miracles Jesus was doing, but when he saw that, something clicked. So he said, since it's you out there in the middle of this storm on the water, let me come to you. Let me walk like you are walking, John said. It expressed a deep desire, a God-given desire that Peter had to live like Jesus. Now that didn't come out until that happened, until Jesus came walking on the water. Did Peter even recognize he had that God-given desire in him? So, and that God-given desire came out in his request, let me come to you. And of course, Jesus's response was, come. And that's the same response he has for anyone who wants to live their life like he did. So then he went to John chapter 1. He was talking about John the Baptizer. And it really hit me because he said he was at the Jordan River baptizing folks who are willing to change their thinking about God. So that's what happened to me. I mean, all of a sudden, the religion and all the other stuff that I had been caught up in, I just kept saying there's got to be more to it than this. And anyway, he said they had been conditioned under the old covenant that they had to do certain things to please God. Now that I'm a Christian, what do I need to do or quit doing? Okay, how many of us have been living that kind of lifestyle? All of us, right? We come from that. It's the same kind of attitude Israel had. Israel had a performance-based attitude based on living their lives up to the standard of the law of Moses. And that's what Martin was talking about, law versus grace. So we have all been conditioned under the old covenant. That's the old man. That's the green pen, Martin, you were holding up. And that guy's dead. But the leftover remnants, all the conditioning in our subconscious mind, the leftover, the carnal mind, the coping strategies, the survival techniques, the reasoning, all of that is still there. the old man is dead, but the leftover remnants is still there, living with the new man that we are. So that's why John came saying, I want you to change your mind, repent. 180-degree change in our thinking from trying to live up to the standard of the law of Moses, which is the law, to grace and truth, to believing that we were crucified with him, buried with him, and a brand new person was raised up. Now that truth is the truth, whether we ever believe it or not. It happened. And that's good news for me because honestly, most of the time I'm not believing it. And it takes him showing up and proving himself to me and opening my eyes to see before I come back to believing. Because I am so conditioned otherwise, it's just natural for me to think it's not real, he's not there, he doesn't care. And then as soon as you start suffering, it really comes out. You know, Martin and I talked earlier, and we were talking about being squeezed. When you start getting squeezed, that's when what you really believe comes out. That's when what you really need to say or what you're really feeling comes out. Because at that point, you don't care who likes you. You're not going to be concerned about fear of rejection, you know, because you're dying inside. So then he dropped down to, he talked about Andrew's brother went, the two disciples, and he went to get Andrew or went to get, what was his name? Simon. Andrew went to get his brother Simon. And then when he came, Jesus said to him, "You're Simon, son of Jonah." So he would let him know right off the bat, he already knew everything about him, and he hadn't even gotten introduced yet. So that was another key point that the Lord hit me with, is how, who's somebody, I think, Mike, you just said it, before I was in my mother's womb, he knew me.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't fathom that. Anyway, so then at that time, he goes, you know, Peter changed his name, changed his identity. I mean, Jesus changed Peter's name and identity at that point. So then the other thing that hit me was, and that was the first thing that happened to him, was his identity was changed when he met Jesus. The first thing that happened was the Lord changed his identity. Same thing happens to us, you know. But then he said it took a little while for that new identity to work itself out. And that is what, Dan, you were talking about. That's where, and Martin, that's where the transformation starts taking place. It starts off with our identity was changed. And it takes, it's a process. It's a journey. For me, it's a lifestyle of him showing up, doing for me what I can't do for myself. I just walked through another major storm. It started off, everything was falling into place, and then everything completely fell apart. And where I knew I heard God, and I stepped out in faith, and then it just all turned to shit. Well, within 2 weeks, I was bitching, God, where the hell are you? What the hell happened? And then I'm questioning, did I really hear him? Was that really him? You know, like Peter, Lord, if that's you, is that really you? Command me to come, you know. Back in the garden, has God really said? don't eat of the fruit, right? To get us to question, did we really hear God or not, right? But it was a setup because he knew that my flesh was going to flash and I was going to do that. And then he turns around and he does another miracle. He shows up and he does for me, proves himself that he is there. He is in control. He is in charge. All is well. He's got me in all that concerns me. And I'm good again. I mean, it's been like a month. So once again, my flesh is flashing. He shows up and calms the storm. Like immediately, the boat got to the other side. Immediately, it was calm. That's what just happened to me today. I woke up this morning of wreck. I mean, an absolute wreck. And then within a couple hours, total calm, total peace. Because the Lord showed up and did for me what I can't do for myself and gave me eyes to see it. That's all I got.
What are you thinking, Ron?
I think we're trying to figure out what God's up to with each of us. And that, I don't know that we can do that. But how he does it, we might get a glimpse of. I think, Jim, you just said it, when he opens our eyes to see it. The only way we're going to be done with this flesh is when this body dies.
Yeah.
We're going to have it. And to think that God expects us not to screw up is really, I think, denying his intelligence. But he teaches us, just as you shared, Jim, a minute ago, that each of these things are a learning experience for us, where we can see how he thinks. We can begin to know how he thinks about all of our circumstances. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Yeah, he does, but we don't. And when we are confronted with those circumstances tomorrow or later tonight or whenever, he's going to show us how he thinks. That's changing our thinking. That's changing our minds. That's walking in that teaching yoke that we have in him, with him. He's showing us how to overcome this flesh that we're stuck with until the body dies. He's showing us how to deal with that. I think he knows we're going to have flesh flashes all the time. But he's showing us how he deals with it. He just forgets it. I mean, it's gone. He sees it and it's gone. But he also knows how he wants us to think like him in those circumstances. I was thinking when Dan was talking earlier about that movement that went on about what would Jesus do? That really is, the movement was crazy. I mean, it was like everything else that man gets a hold of, he screws it up.
I still got the bracelet.
Yeah, it's still what God's doing, though. I mean, that's what we need to look at. How would Jesus do this? How would he react? How would he respond? And when we screw it up, Jim. I mean, there's nothing it's the flesh that's screwing it up. It's not us. We can look at it that way, but this idea of changing our thinking becomes so important, and renewing our mind is the way that we need to walk in this life in order to not condemn ourselves, in order to not fully be acting out of the flesh all the time. And
Yep.
And he renews them, I think, as he wants to. I mean, if he wanted us all to live perfect lives right now, today, he could do that. But he hasn't done that. So, and he doesn't, I don't think he expects that from us. We expect that of ourselves because of our past thinking, because of our past convictions of what a good Christian should be or shouldn't be. And
Conditioning.
all that conditioning that's gone on before, it carries over. That's the thinking that he's trying to get us away from.
And Ron, do you think that goes to the same thing when we say we screw up? Like, where do we get that list from, or like where do we get the
exactly?
You know,
Yeah, and it's actually not a screw up because it went down exactly according to plan, so that I would learn and grow by it.
Exactly.
Because now my mind just got renewed because he just showed up in the midst of the storm.
yeah, right.
That's what changes us.
And,
right.
And I think the enemy, he loves it.
Yeah.
When we talk to ourselves like that, oh man, I screwed this up.
Yep.
It's just, to me, it's just a harassment.
Yeah, good word.
It's the leftover remnants of the flesh. It's just harassing the new man. That's all it is. It's just harassment.
Yeah, when you buy into it, then there's the condemnation. You know?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And what's interesting about that, the accuser's already been punished. The accuser of all mankind with Christ's death on the cross, that's all been taken care of. There is no accuser before God accusing man of being a screw up. He doesn't exist. Who's accusing us is ourselves.
Right.
Based on our conditioning.
Right.
Living in that works performance covenant and trying to learn how to live in the grace and freedom covenant.
Yeah, and then we get down on ourselves when we go, oh man, I screwed this up, and it's like, well, how did you?
But see, Ron, you just said trying to live under. That's the key right there. We're trying to do it. We can't do it.
Right.
It has to be him enabling us to do it.
Yeah,
he has to lead us. We have to be in the yoke and walk with him and learn of him. It's not about us doing it. It's about us seeing him work in our life for us.
Yeah. And
that's where we're getting cross-threaded, is the moment that we start trying to do it.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that we need to try to learn how to walk in grace and truth. I'm saying we need to accept that covenant.
That's a byproduct.
Yeah, it's a byproduct. I think what it is it's the new creation that we've been made into, wanting us to do that, wanting us to walk in that creation, in that truth, in that mindset, versus the old mindset of have to do it to please God. The law and rules that we've been conditioned to. It's getting.
We set those thresholds, and it's really we're just putting law on ourselves. Right. Okay, when I pass this, I screwed up, or when I done this, I've done well. It's all these different thresholds.
Right.
And it's
a desire.
My threshold might be a lot lower to where I say I screwed up than say maybe Mike's threshold. Sorry, I couldn't help it.
Mike, we all have been given a new name that no man knows what it is. Okay, so
I'm so glad he shared that.
Yeah. One of the things I got out of Peter.
Peter knew his name, and so I don't know. He's given us a new nature, that's for sure.
That's for sure. Well, and that's the one thing one of the things I got out of this message, and looking at that concept of having his name changed. He did that right away when he first met Jesus. He didn't have to wait until he said, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. He didn't change his name at that point. He just said the Spirit has told you that. He changed his name when he met him, right at the outset of this, which I thought was another interesting point. But what he changed his name to, and the way he changed it was, to me, or how he changed it in the Greek language, is amazing, because what it really boils down to is you're called Simon. You're a reed blowing back and forth. You're thinking in the law and works versus grace and truth, and then you're back in the law and works, and then you're in grace and truth, and you're flip-flopping back and forth. That's the reed concept. That's believing one thing one minute and something else the next minute. And James talks a lot about that, and he knew about it, believe me. Anyway, when he changed his name to Peter, Petros, it means, I used to think it meant a stone, and I know John calls it that, and I know what he thinks about it too. But another Greek scholar I was reading after, he says that's just a chip of the rock. He says when Christ gives you that new creation, when you're born again, you are a chip off the old rock. That's that's how he's saying that.
Yeah.
He says, and that coincides to what John was saying earlier a few weeks ago when he says, or he said it, I don't know, 100 times, I've heard him say it, that I'm not all of Christ. I might be his little finger, but if you cut off Christ's little finger, you're hurting the whole body. I remember him using those examples many times. And that's the same thing I got out of this. I'm not the rock, but I'm made out of that rock. I'm a piece of that rock.
Can I plug in a little thing there, elaborate on what you're saying? There's two different words in the Greek there. He said, "Thou art Peter, a pebble. Mm-hmm. Upon this rock, which is a foundation stone, a huge rock. What you just said about me, I'm going to build my church." That's where people get confused over building it on the Apostle Peter rather than the declaration of "Thou art the Christ." So, I mean, there's two distinct words he uses there. Peter's a pebble, but what Peter said was a rock, a foundation.
Yeah. And that's what this guy was saying too. Basically, is you're chip out of that. You're a piece of that. You belong to that. You are out on your own. It's part of being the bread, the body of Christ being broken. Okay, we're broken into individuals and dispersed throughout the world. And he brings together pieces of those rocks to form his ecclesia in various locations. But the bride, which is the regathering of that whole rock of ages, is one day down the road. So I don't know. To me, that's kind of where I'm trying to fit in my mind about what happens when my flesh flashes, and how come I get so pissed off about it, and how come I want to condemn myself right away with it, and all of those things. I need my mind renewed, or I'd probably commit suicide. I don't know. But it is that thinking that's being changed. And I think that's what God wants. I mean, pretty evident. He wants he's given you a new mind. He's given you the mind of Christ. He's teaching us to use it.
Yeah, Ron, let me jump in real quick. See, saying renewing your mind. Romans 12, 1 and 2, we've all read this 1,000 times. But in light of what we're talking about, right? I beseech you, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your body a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God. It's your reasonable service, right? And then verse 2 is, and don't be conformed to this world. It tells you you're a screw up, even if it's just between your own ears, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. Now you can't do verse 1 until you believe verse 2, till you're doing verse 2, you know, by that renewal of your mind. And then everything falls into place after that.
Well, I would imagine it would fall into place. If I could think just like God thinks, everything would be perfect in my life. Believe me. Even the hardships.
And then the next verse is for us that might get a little cocky. You know, it's I say, through the grace given to me, to every man that is among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to. Bring that back into balance, you know. And so, but go ahead, Ron. I'm sorry. That was a perfect time to read it.
No, that's good. If there's a process that believers are under, it's the process of realizing who God has made us to be and the mind He's given us. That's the process. I don't think that to call it sanctification to me is not right. It's a process of learning of me, as Jesus said, to learn of me. That's a process of that. And in doing so, you're going to see yourself as in a mirror.
That's good.
Yeah.
Because you're already sanctified, or if Ephesians 1 and 2 is really off the charts, one or the other.
Sometimes when you stick a label on it, you miss the whole point. You know, I mean, you put that beautifully, Ron. You know, one of the things I know when I got into this, I wanted to know what all these religious words meant, and one of them was sanctified. And it's different to be shown by God than to be told by man. You know, because He's God and they're not. You know. Yeah, man. Awesome. Well, we're coming up on 10 after 8. Has anybody got anything else pressing?
I'm good.
I'm so glad you showed up, Bill, with your internet working.
Yeah.
That's cool, man.
Yeah.
Thank all the people for watching tonight. Pat, Kelly, Becky, Dar, and Barbara Kelly. I want to thank these guys for showing up. I don't know about anybody else, but I got some love out of these 5 tonight. It was awesome. It really was. We'll be here in the same time, same place next week. And we'll go wherever John goes. Have a good week.